Who Dat Nation, welcome in. And I just want to say, first of all, first of all, I've been disrespected. You know what? No, first off, how dare I'm always late. What's with this? I'm always late. Y'all are terrible. I'm not late. A wizard arrives precisely when he means to, and that's what this beard entitles me to do. Today, we're going to talk about some factual information. Today, we're going to discuss Alvin Kamara. Now, this discussion, I want to be very clear, does not give my personal thoughts on whether the man is right or wrong in what happened. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved. Nobody hit me. I didn't hit anybody. There is no videotape, y'all are aware of me hitting any individual. But what we will discuss today is what his potential suspension, if any, could look like based on the updates to the story. And we're going to use the NFL's own system. We're going to discuss that because not everybody knows the NFL personal conduct policy. You know why I know you don't know it? Because who the heck would take the time to do that except for crazy people like analysts, podcasters, etc. I wouldn't expect you to read it. I didn't even want to read it, but I read it for you, and we're going to talk about how exactly it works. Okay? And then we'll discuss how this could affect Alvin Kamara, whether he's in the clear, whether you can still expect there to be problems arise, or whether the man is just going to get maybe a couple games. Now, I did post on Twitter that I thought that maybe he gets a couple of games because of this. Now, this is me just, again, taking a wild guess based on what I'm seeing and based on what the conduct policy actually states. It doesn't mean that I can guarantee you that there's no suspension or that he doesn't get a 6-game suspension. But here's why everybody thought there would be a minimum, including myself. Please don't make it act like I am taking myself out of this, like I wasn't also saying 6 games. Here is why we said 6 games. I'm reading in part the NFL disciplinary decision of the domestic violence policy. An individual is subject to discipline under the policy if the person is determined to be guilty of a criminal charge or if the NFL investigation demonstrates the person engaged in conduct prohibited by the policy. Depending on the nature of the violation and the person's record, discipline may be a fine, suspension, community service, or a combination of the three. Violations involving assault, battery, domestic violence, or sexual assault will result in a baseline 6-game suspension without pay, with more if aggravating factors are present, such as the use of a weapon or crime against a child. A second offense will result in banishment from the NFL. Now, this is about halfway down the overall policy. So what I want to do before we get started, I'm going to give a shout out to all those who are here already. I want to give a big thank you to TJ, Mr. Jared, Appreciate, Negative Fish, Lesta, Lacey Cole, Chemo Slice, because some of the OGs in here, because everybody wants to know about Alvin Kamara. Be Kind, Nixo, AJ Gaines, Creole King, Matthew Penn, Abraham, James Griffon, Vincent Kion, Joseph Feltville. I'm just saying names weird. Now, Eric Howard, welcome on in. I'm going to read to you in its entirety. This is the NFL's conduct policy in its basic form. Possible violations of personal conduct policies occur due to law enforcement investigations and NFL investigations that will be going on at the same time. So something happens, investigation starts, both criminally and inside the NFL for its own conduct policy. The NFL is anytime the league becomes aware of a conduct that might violate this policy, will undertake an investigation conducted by the NFL special counsel. They have their own, it's hilarious, but it's not the NCIS, but it's the SCIC. So maybe we'll get a TV show about that one day, who will oversee the investigatory procedures and issue the initial discipline for violation. The law enforcement is going to do what law enforcement does. They do their own investigation and come to the conclusions whether or not there is one. There is a paid leave, so being put on the commissioner's exempt list, which means an individual may be put on paid leave if formally charged with a violent crime or sexual assault, or if the NFL investigation finds sufficient credible evidence that it appears a violation of the policy has occurred. Paid leave will last until the completion of the investigation. This basically says you're under investigation right now, but we're going to continue to issue checks. Like if the season had started and there were game checks on the line, you can be put on paid leave while they're undergoing investigation. The key is the NFL always follows after what the official ruling is in terms of criminal court, etc. The NFL disciplinary decision. An individual is subject under the policy if the person is determined guilty of a criminal charge. That's actually what we just read. So, resources for families and victims will also be provided. Now, responsive individual. The individual is given notice, so the person that we're talking about, in case it be Alvin Kamara, notice of proposed discipline and can choose to appeal the decision while remaining on paid leave during the duration of the appeal, meaning he could continue to play while his case is being appealed. In cases of criminal conviction, the underlying conviction cannot be challenged, and the court's judgment and factual findings are binding for the purposes of the NFL disciplinary process. So this is important, because what this means is if you are convicted of a violent crime, assault, etc., then there is a baseline that you cannot get away with in the NFL. You can't just appeal your way out of, a felony account that you have been charged with. Some of y'all can see where we're going with this so far, but don't worry if you can't. Stick with me. You're going to find out. Now, moving on to the next part of this. There's an NFL expert panel hearing. An appeal process will include a review panel of 3 outside experts to make recommendations to the commissioner or his designee. So basically, it takes the NFL commissioner out of it so Roger Goodell can't be completely in control. But then there's the final decision process. The commissioner or his designee reviews the panel's recommendation and makes a final decision. So the big key here is why this is such a big deal. Because what Alvin Kamara ended up pleading to was he pled no contest to a misdemeanor charge of breach of peace. So there's now nothing on his record that says that he was guilty of assault. There's nothing on his record that says that he's guilty of battery. There's nothing on his record that says that he did anything criminally to physically harm another individual. Now, this does not just do away with the fact that there's video evidence of things that have happened. But video evidence can be debated one way or the other. Context is important. You can't get a full story from a video. But what you do have from this is Alvin Kamara has now essentially, how do we want to word this? He's paid off the problem. Now, I'm not saying that in a negatory way. He is going to pay for over $100,000 in medical bills. That's a hell of a medical bill. He's going to have to pay 30 hours of community service, but he has no felony charges. And this deal has basically put him a proverbial slap on the wrist. And the official statement by his attorney was Alvin is pleased that this matter is behind him and looks forward to a successful NFL season. Now, the NFL still has the ability, as we just read, through their conduct policy, to make a decision saying that he deserves to miss time because he did not represent the league well. And then it becomes, well, what is the appropriate reaction to what is essentially a misdemeanor? Or do we punish him more strictly simply because this has been in the news and there is video of some of the stuff that went on? Now, that's the question that the NFL has to answer. And appreciate, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Falcons fans in shambles after hearing the AK News and the NFL Twitter page uploading the full 28-3 Super Bowl game. Tragic. So let's add some key points in all this case. Originally, 6 games was guaranteed to happen if Alvin Kamara was found guilty of his crime and convicted of any type of battery or assault. That's the baseline. You can't get away from it, guaranteed. Well, that has been removed in terms of the NFL has removed, or the NFL no longer has that as an operating baseline, according to their very own conduct policy. Now, what I personally, let me just interject this before we continue to talk about, what I personally believe happens is the NFL is going to lay down a 4 to 6 game suspension that Alvin Kamara would immediately appeal. That appeal will end up probably going down to 2 to 3 games. That is what I personally expect to happen. based on what we've seen the NFL do and based on how the conduct policy is created. So, for those who don't know what the NFL Conduct Committee is it is a panel of 9 NFL owners. And this is why it gets a little sketchy if you were a player. 9 NFL owners responsible for reviewing the policy at least annually and recommending changes to the policy going forward. So, this is not as much about protecting players as it is about protecting the league's image. And when the owners are the ones dictating what the image is, well, we've seen historically that image is not that kind to certain people. How about we just put it that way? It's not that kind to certain things that happen. There's definitely a paradigm of perfection almost. There's a superiority complex, to put it lightly, that the NFL owners, some of them, it's not all of them, because we are reaching a day and age in the league where we now have minority owners, we have investment groups made up of minorities, so it's no longer the dead president's club that it used to be, but still, it is something that this committee is not a player-led, we want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves accountable. This is literally something to make the image of the NFL appear as spotless as possible. But to go back to the original part that we talked about to start the show, before we get to any disciplinary decision, ongoing criminal proceedings have to finish first. The only thing the NFL can do under this set when there's ongoing criminal proceedings is to have a player be on paid leave. Basically, we've got our eye on you, but until an actual criminal proceeding is concluded, all that you are on is paid leave. After that, then you can move on to the NFL disciplinary decision. Now, I want to reread it just so that for those of you who came in, y'all get this. Here is exactly the stage that we are at. An individual is subject to discipline under this policy if the person is determined to be guilty of a criminal charge or if the NFL investigation demonstrates the person engaged in conduct prohibited by the policy. Depending on the nature of the violation and of the person's record, which Alvin Kamara's record is spotless, it should be noted, discipline may be a fine, suspension, community service, or a combination of the three. Violations involving assault, battery, domestic violence, or sexual assault will result in a baseline 6-game suspension without pay, with more if aggravating factors are present, such as the use of a weapon, crime against a child, etc. So, this is a big deal because, in my opinion, there is now, even if we want to theorize there was assault, etc., well, criminally, that has been swept away. So, that no longer holds the weight it does. And again, I started this stream to make clear that I'm not taking a side of whether or not Alvin Kamara is innocent or guilty or whether he did it or didn't do it. I'm simply talking policy of what the NFL itself provides. Like, this is literally what the NFL says is their conduct policy and how they will go about it. As in, this is what they will do. Now, in terms of illicit suspensions that we've had over recent years, because I know this is what most people are interested in. What is, kind of a precedent here? Let's go over some recent suspensions that we've had in the league. Does that sound good? We've got suspensions for all kinds of things. Now, the suspension I think that most people are going to be familiar with is substance abuse, those types. Somebody took a drug they shouldn't have. They took some Adderall or something like that. There have been definitely a lot of other suspensions in the league since then. In fact, we've had tons. So, for example, Maurice Pouncey for the Pittsburgh Steelers was suspended for 3 games, later reduced to 2 games for fighting. And this was an in-game fight that happened, but this seems oddly familiar in terms of what happened. There was no criminal assault charges. There was no battery charges. There were no criminal proceedings that resulted in anything being filed that ended up on that individual's record. However, it was a full-on, we saw it happen. It was a fight. It was issued as a 3-game suspension and appealed to a 2-game suspension. I think that is an important note. I'm not sure if chat would agree or not. Now, we can go back to other examples of several different suspensions that have happened. Now, truthfully, there are not a ton of suspensions that have happened that are as close to the, I mean, there's a ton that have to do with somebody got caught with 14 half-size nickels of a weed and suspended for 4 games. And it's just what the NFL did for a long time. But in terms of physical violence, things like that, doesn't happen terribly often. Now, there are some. For example, Josh Brown, the kicker. I don't know how many of y'all remember this. This is going back to 2017. He served 6 games. And this is kind of the baseline of what we're talking about. I'm not sure if y'all remember when this happened because it was a long time ago, but this was a documented domestic violence case. Like, this actually went through the process, and sadly for, his ex-wife and all this other stuff, that happened. And he served a 6-game suspension, and it was not walked down. Antonio says, I'm optimistic, that's cool. I'm just simply presenting facts. That's all I wanted to come through today and do. I wanted to present straight facts of where we are right now. And a legitimate fact is the last fighting style, this happened would be Maurice Pouncey, which would just be about, 4 years ago, and he had a 3-game suspension reduced to 2. Again, this is just an example. You have another one, if you want to go back even further, 2018, Leonard Fournette, he was suspended for fighting Shaq Lawson during a game for 1 game, never appealed it, and just served a 1-game suspension. Going outside of things that have happened in the league, you can look at things like Josh Brown that we brought up, but there was also legal precedent that happened first, as in criminal charges and everything, and then that turned into worse. And you can honestly argue that Josh Brown deserved more, but that's neither here nor there. Historically, the 6-game suspension does not come out very often. In fact, you will really struggle to find that actually get doled out very often. The NFL actually tries to keep its big name players who make big name money on the field. There are exceptions to that, where we have what Terry Glenn got suspended for the entire 2001 season, but that was because he was refusing to come to training camp and stuff. That was over money. You don't have a lot of things in terms of violence resulting in players being suspended for a long period of time. In fact, in terms of non-substance abuse suspensions, we're not counting any type of marijuana usage, etc. Here are the suspensions that have happened over the past few years. You have Maurice Pouncey, 3 games for fighting, reduced to 2 after appeal. You had the Larry Ogunjobi, unnecessary roughness, 1 game. You then had Vontaze Burfict, who was a repeat offender, ended up getting 12 games, which was the remainder of the 2019 season, but that was also, he was a repeat offender. Alvin Kamara is not. Alvin Kamara actually has a spotless record. Leonard Fournette, 1 game. All right. You get Michael Kendricks. He ended up having 8 games, but that was due to a guilty plea, keyword guilty plea, for insider trading. Again, that's a real weird one for me. Jimmy Smith with the Ravens, 4 games. Jalen Ramsey, team rule violation, 1 game. Dante Fowler, personal conduct policy, the thing we're talking about right now, 1 game. And in terms of what Dante Fowler did, his was, I'm trying to remember all these is very difficult. What was his about? I know he's had several off field, but he pled no contest, if I remember, to a battery and criminal mischief charge. And I don't think that he was ever found guilty. I think it was another one of those plea deals. So that'd be very similar. And Chad, if y'all want to Google it up, pretty sure that's what it was for Dante Fowler, was he had some off-season issues, pleaded no contest to a battery charge, and that resulted in a 1-game suspension. So you have instances of this, and again, I could keep going back because I only went back to like 2018. You have more Zeke in 2017, which TJ just brought up. The key I'm making, though, is that 6 games now seems very unlikely based on precedent and based on everything that's happened in terms of Alvin Kamara's case itself. Seems unlikely that the 6-game suspension is going to hold. Now I would say that it looks to be going closer to the 2 to 3 game mark, because one thing that can't be denied is the video evidence. So we'll see how that actually plays out. Joe says Ray Rice got 2 games for laying out his fiance at the time, which obviously is terrible. Now, we'll point out, Joseph, that was before the new conduct policy was put in. So there really was like a wild west of conduct policy where they just kind of did it arbitrarily. However we want to suspend a guy, we suspend a guy. And now it's a little bit more strict and stringent, including there is now a 6-game minimum if you have a domestic violence charge, if you do have, assault. But now that doesn't actually weigh there for New Orleans. I still think that Alvin Kamara is going to serve a suspension. But what was going from 6, I think now is coming much closer down to 2 to 3 games, maybe 4. I tend to think that, sure, the video is there, but at the end of the day, there's no criminal charges. Scratch that. There are no criminal charges for assault, battery, etc. What he has is a breach of peace, which you get that for playing your music too loud. That's, again, I'm not saying that he's not going to be suspended for any portion of time, but you can take recent individuals like Donta Fowler, like Maurice Pouncey. You can also take other ones, and you're going to find that you're not getting that 6 games. Now, how much ends up being in between that, we'll have to wait and see. And this also doesn't include the appeals process, which, as the policy states, once you're in appeal, everything just kind of keeps on going as normal. As long as things are under appeal, in theory, Kamara serves no suspension at all this year, depending on how long that appeal process takes. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into I'm not trying to say he doesn't deserve anything. Again, I'm not trying to do this with any taking of sides. But the appeals process has to go to a whole nother panel. And they're going to review it. And they're going to look at it. You can literally have this getting pushed on to next season, depending on how quickly the NFL renders their judgment. Now, if they do it within the next month or two before the season starts, odds are this gets finished sometime in the season, which I know as Saints fans, that might sound aggravating because then that means if he does appeal the process, the suspension can end up happening in the middle of the end of the season, which would obviously be problematic if this team has managed to have some level of success and are fighting for a playoff spot. So then the argument is, well, just go ahead and take it at the beginning of the season and be ready for the rest of the year. Really curious to see how that's going to play out at all, if it does. But as of now, that is kind of where you're at with Alvin Kamara. Where it goes beyond that, curious to see. Now, Kat Terrell wrote about this. She wrote it on, she's with ESPN now. She's been everywhere. I remember, obviously, when she was with the Times-Picayune, that was real big for me. But Alvin Kamara did put out an official apology. The NFL released a statement right after, says that we've been closely monitoring all developments and it remains under review. And they do list assault and battery as their prohibited conduct in their personal conduct policy. But being outside of conviction of a crime, yes, that's not enough to prevent there being a suspension, but it does prevent, historically, the full severity of that suspension being played out. So now I'm curious what chat thinks. And I will go ahead and just point out what TJ is saying. Alvin Kamara's apology was, it was an apology. I don't know. I'm not trying to confront this man's character, but that was a short apology. Put it that way. That was a short apology. So Joe says, if he does, or if he is suspended, can he be with the team until the regular season? So whenever the suspension gets laid down, it's going to be suspension based on games. So if he were to get suspended right now, if the NFL came out and said, hey, you're getting a 4-game suspension, he's going to be with the team all the way through training camp, preseason, etc. And as soon as week 1 hits, Alvin Kamara is not allowed near the facility, can't talk to players, can't be around anything until the suspension is served. But until that actually hits, AK is going to be around. He's going to be practicing. He's going to be doing all the normal things, installs, playbook, working with Derek Carr. But whenever the suspension is going to hit, that is actually when AK will just be eating wings, playing Madden, and chilling for however long the suspension lasts, assuming there is a suspension. Cree says, how much issue is the media typically is it being a huge factor in how someone gets suspended? I honestly don't necessarily think that matters much at all. I think what makes the Alvin Kamara case so unique is the fact that there's video evidence that it's undeniable. It's not a he said, she said, and he was booked after a club incident and, it didn't pan out. There's video footage, right? And again, I'm not here to take sides. I'm simply trying to help Saints fans see as much as possible of like whether you're going to get your player or not this year. And I think now it seems pretty undoubtable that you are going to get it. Now, I will also add, just let me throw in my 2 cents of the opinion here. Sure, the video exists, but you're going to... Anybody here ever actually been in court? Just a legitimate question real quick. Anybody ever been in court? When it comes to videos and video evidence, these CCTVs get torn apart all the time. Like, literally just, you can barely, a good attorney will have, whether you're in a full-blown trial with a jury or you're just going with a judge, a good attorney will have you believe that what you're seeing is not what you're seeing, because these cameras, and it's always odd because you would think a multi-billion-dollar casino or something has CCTV that is not being shot in 320 potato. But the truth is, the TMZ video that was released that showed Alvin Kamara and his group and everything, the quality looked like it was from, you remember that website Live Leak that you used to go watch as a kid? It was like 2004. That's the quality of the video. And what you're going to have is being argued is, unless there's a better one out there that I've not seen, I've only seen the same one that I think everybody else saw at the end of last year. How much you going to be able to pull from that and say Alvin Kamara deserves a 6-game suspension? I think the appeals process for Kamara is going to really help him out. No matter what the league does, as it tends to happen, I think no matter what the league does, the league can come out and say that he deserves 6 games. And I think that good representation and a good appeal is going to have that knocked down quite a bit. Quite a bit. Right? King Arthur says, I don't know if you answered this, Brett, but does the NFL have to marry the discipline timetable to the courts? So they do, by their own policy, wait until the court proceedings finalized before they put their own disciplinary action in. As in, if this were to have gone to trial, which it's not, Alvin Kamara has simply pled guilty to a lesser charge. If this was going to go to trial, nothing would happen on the NFL side. They allow criminal proceedings to finish first. It's actually part of their domestic violence policy. You can download the domestic violence policy PDF from, I think, CBS News has it laying around somewhere. It's actually where I pulled it from. The only thing that can happen when the criminal proceedings are ongoing is paid leave or being put on the commissioner's exempt list. The NFL will not put out their own disciplinary action until the criminal proceedings have concluded. Now, in this case, they have, because he pled guilty to a lesser charge of disturbing the peace. That's what he pled down to. And then he paid the medical bills of those injured. And then whatever other dollar amount got slid under a table, because either that $105,000 medical bill was obscene or that's pocket money. I don't know which, but we do know that in any case where somebody pleads down and issues an apology, money exchange hands. And let's not pretend like that didn't happen. And again, I'm not here to say it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it happened, and we're trying to determine how quickly this man gets back on the field and how long he's there. He says, is there a difference in how fast the suspension process is during the offseason versus the regular season? Nope, there is none. It happens basically at the whim of the NFL. And I've never noticed a difference in between the two. AJ says, I think it's extremely stupid that there's a conduct policy for gigantic men who play a full contact sport that simulates war. Regardless of that, AJ, as I pointed out, I want to remind you, here's a direct quote from their PDF. What is the NFL Conduct Committee? The NFL Conduct Committee is a panel of 9 NFL owners responsible for reviewing the policy at least annually and recommending changes to the policy going forward. Subject matter experts, former players, and executives will advise the Conduct Committee and the commissioner and his staff on both education and discipline. Basically, the entire point of this whole process is they want to make the league look good. All they care about is self-image preservation. That's the whole point of the conduct policy. It's not to protect people. And again, I am not trying to come into defense of those who commit domestic violence, for example. But the NFL doesn't give a flying flippity hoo-ha. Not a single McDonald's burger that has been turned over right now and in every given second about what is happening to victims. All they care about is what their image is. And if their image being protected means they got to help a victim, then they'll help a victim. But truthfully, all this is created and run and overseen by owners to make sure that the NFL still looks good so that you still go pay your ticket, go see your football game, and go buy a jersey. That's it. The NFL isn't doing it out of, this, man, we want our people to be good people. We want them to be best. We want to educate them. It has nothing to do with that. This is like any major corporation, purely designed to make them look good so that you continue to buy their product. So with that in mind, they can issue whatever they want to issue. Like Brian said, it's all about optics. So they can still issue the 6-game suspension. The key is, and this is where like the NFLPA and everybody have fought for, the appeals process. Because Goodell can truly come out and say, screw Alvin Kamara, I don't care. I got you on camera. If it ain't 4K, it's more like 400 bits, but still, you're taking 6. Thankfully, there's an appeals process that is outside of the commissioner. And that is 3 experts come in, they review the entire case, and then they make the recommendation. But truthfully, it does come back to the commissioner no matter what. But there is now at least a better line of how this goes through. You can actually track it. Whereas there was a time just a decade ago where this whole conduct policy was literally just commissioner decided, bam, this is how it is, do it. Now there's actually a flow chart you can actually follow. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at now. Rachel says, Dennis Allen on the hot seat, he and Carmichael, but you are right about the Saints. Vincent, Saints will find a way to screw it up. Hope you're wrong. Who dat? I honestly don't think Dennis Allen's on the hot seat. I know it's a popular thing to say, but I really don't think the man's on the hot seat. So, is there a minimum suspension? Well, in terms of suspension, the minimum is 1 game. I mean, any suspension is 1 game in terms of a minimum. There's tons of those. Remember when Marshawn Lynch got suspended a game for making contact with an official? That was stupid. Zeke had his domestic violence. That was 6 games. And trying to remember, because TJ had just mentioned that, I'm trying to remember, was Zeke ever found guilty of that one, or did he plead down as well? I honestly don't remember. I don't honestly remember. In fact, no charges ended up getting filed by that one, if I remember right. They chose not to pursue charges, yet the league went and suspended Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games anyway, if I'm remembering correctly. And then was there an appeals process for that? I'd have to go back. There's been way too many suspensions. The accuser was deemed not credible. So the NFL can still do whatever they want to do, but there's now a better system in place to try and make it more fair, I guess you would call it. I don't know how fair you could even call this thing, but anyway. I mean, you've got guys that have been suspended for an entire year for gambling, and not even gambling like against themselves, gambling on their own team. Like just Hey, I bet $20 we're going to win. Get out. Like stupid stuff. But anyway, I guess that is what it is. Also curious where Alvin Kamara is going to do his 30 hours of community service. So, David says, think about how all the concussion stuff came out, and the NFL is all about player safety, but then they take away a game away from the preseason and add to the regular season. It is about making money. Now, I will also say, I think the preseason's stupid. Always have. And I think it should just run. I think there should be games, and you should run it. I mean, hockey is a violent sport, extremely violent sport. And they play 82 games. And they take concussions and stuff extremely seriously. I think preseason is stupid. It should be done away with. That's just me. That doesn't mean I think that training camp should be done away with, but I also think that roster sizes should be larger. I think roster sizes should be far larger than 53, which is something the NFLPA and everybody, when they do their CBA negotiations, are constantly fighting for, which is why the practice squad is so much larger now. It's why it can include veterans, etc. I want more NFL games. I think more NFL games that matter makes the game better. But it's obviously a wildly popular sport even without that, right? NBA has their 82 games. Baseball's got 162. Hockey's got their 82. And yet the NFL is able to outperform all of those, running 17 regular game seasons. So, is there a timeline for when he has to get the community service done? Abraham, that would be up to where that court case was determined, and I'm sure there is a timetable. I have no idea, but I'll be honest, man. Usually when it comes to community service stuff, they don't even make you do the community service where you were charged. You could say that you did you could get your written soup kitchen stuff done 3 states away where you live, turn it into the clerk of court and everything and to the judge, and you're good. So he probably ends up doing his community service in Louisiana. I doubt he even has to go back out to Vegas and stuff and do community service. You're not going to see Alvin Kamara picking up trash in the middle of the Vegas desert, right? He's probably going to do something in New Orleans. Hell, he might be able to do his own foundations as charity work and do that. But that's all determined by the court, not by the NFL. Do you think our D-line will improve against the run? Really hope so, Dupree. I personally believe that they did a really good job beefing up the interior. I'm really excited about it, but you got to see it on the field. Carr not better than Winston. Strong disagree there, Vincent. Strong disagree. Carr is a much better quarterback than Jameis Winston. But I guess it depends on what you like. Jameis Winston, whose decision-making has been suspect his career and is coming off a broken back, yeah, give me Derek Carr all day long. But hell, 3 years ago, I wanted Jameis Winston more than I wanted Drew Brees. So, but in the year 2023 of our Lord, give me Derek Carr 100 times out of 100. And to be honest, he fits Pete Carmichael better anyway. So for better or for worse, I don't even want Pete Carmichael here, but for better or for worse, your best chance of winning the game is, it's Derek Carr. Yeah. TJ says, if you like 30 interceptions and injuries, then Jameis is your guy. I don't even do the 30 interception thing because, look, that happened, but I think a lot of that was Bruce Arians. But I also can't get past the injuries at this point. I mean, I really have rooted for Winston, but I think his time is done. And he could still be an extremely, extremely good backup in the league. Extremely good backup in the league. So we will just wait and see. I think running back touches are going to be spread amongst the team. Well, I think it's going to be AK's primary. Short yardage situations is going to be Jamal Williams, and then random, maybe averaging 5 touches a game early on, maybe working his way up to 10 touches a game will be Miller. And as far as Hill goes, that's really on Pete Carmichael. Like, when's he actually going to decide to use the guys? And that I don't really know. So, was with all the Devontae Adams trade talk for Saints, is it realistic at all? Not only is it not realistic, I don't even think the New Orleans Saints are interested, To be honest, I really don't. I really don't think they are. I don't even think, I think this is more off-season hoopla. I don't think New Orleans Saints are interested. I don't think they were interested in Hunter Renfrow really at all either. But I don't think that they're interested in Devontae Adams. I think this is just all off-season. We got to find a talking point. And this is a constant, every off-season this is going to happen. I don't think New Orleans is interested. And I'm not saying Devontae Adams is ass. That's definitely not the argument I'm making, but they don't want his paycheck. They've already got a young, up-and-coming receiver who plays his position. And again, I'm not trying to say Chris Olave right now is better than Devontae Adams, who is an amazing player. I just don't think that they're interested in that. I think that they like what they have in a young room. They want to see if their receivers work out, and they would rather carry over their cap space they have right now into next year than they would bring in Devontae Adams, who does he really move the win-loss needle that much? I mean, if they were still selling Khalil Mack for like 2 packs of menthols, I would have taken Khalil Mack. Obviously, that's not a thing now. Sure, Khalil Mack. We'll make a way for Khalil Mack, but Devontae Adams? No, I don't really think they're even interested. Who has more sacks in 2023, Foskey or Granderson? I'm gonna go with Granderson. Really depends on snap count. Who gets more opportunities? Who gets more opportunities? That's really what that comes down to me. Who gets more opportunities? So. Thank you, TJ, for dropping the Discord link. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, as always. You're a good dude. Well, you're an okay dude, but I appreciate you. Don says, I'm not interested in Devontae Adams. We overkill. We already have too many wide receivers now. Well, I don't know if we have too many wide receivers, because that does imply that we have like a legit set of wide receivers. And while I do like our wide receivers, Michael Thomas, who hasn't been healthy in years, Chris Olave, who's is a stud, but still hasn't reached superstar status, and Rashid Shaheed, who's one that we need to elevate his play and make sure he's at the next level, is not exactly a star-studded wide receiver room. Now, it's a better room than we're used to over the past couple years. So, Don, I'm not trying to take that away from you. There's also zero doubt that Devontae Adams is an immediate upgrade to several people. Right? But still. I'm just saying. We'll see. And we still got to figure out what that groin injury with Shaheed is anyway. They said back in June, right at a month ago, not serious. No big deal. Nick Underhill said, no big deal. We'll see. There's been a lot of no big deals that ended up missing games. So, yeah. As the offseason goes on, is there any interest in going after Ndamukong Suh? No. Not for me. I mean, you might be interested. I'm not interested. No, thank you. You can have him, but I'm not. Nah, I'm good. I'm actually pretty good on that one. You can have Ndamukong Suh, though. I'm pretty good. What we are going to do is, it is 8:20. We're going to wrap up for the day. Remember, we'll be back Thursday, because it is Tuesday. Maybe we'll get some more New Orleans news, because now that the criminal proceedings have finished, usually the NFL moves pretty quickly after this point. So we'll see if we can ever cheat. I don't want Ndamukong Suh in any way, shape, or form. But we're going to wrap up. Be back Thursday. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Who dat? God bless. I appreciate every single one of you. Hopefully this information helped y'all today, and hopefully it answers some of the questions you may have. And we will see y'all Thursday for our next episode. Deuces. That's me.